Welcome. It's so good to be with you on this Wednesday as we get together for a little midweek Bible study and devotional time. And I'm so glad that you've chosen to join us today to do just that. And I want to also welcome you to join us if you're in the Battle Creek area for worship on Sunday mornings at 10:30. We also have Bible class at 9:30 just before our worship time and our teaching time. And I hope you'll come join us for that. We also have Wednesday night Bible study and a great time to just kind of fellowship and get together and study God's Word together. And so I hope you'll join us for that as well if you are in the Battle Creek area. But in the meantime, I'm so glad that you've taken some time out of your day or afternoon or evening or whenever it is that you're watching this to join us for a little Bible study time online together. And it's good to get together, especially during the middle of the week to kind of hopefully refresh and re-energize ourselves for the rest of the week. We've been in the midst of a series on Wednesday nights as well as on Sunday mornings. It's kind of a continuation on Wednesday nights where we've been digging in a little bit deeper, maybe covering some different things than we do on Sunday mornings. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't listened to the messages already, to go back and listen to those. Both of those are on our YouTube channel, and you can listen to the lessons on Sunday mornings or our previous lessons on Wednesday nights as well. But we've been in the midst of a series where we're walking through Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapters 5 through 7. And today we come to Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 5 verses 21 through 24, where he says this: "You've heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment.' But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, 'Raka,' which is basically just a term of contempt, is answerable to court. And anyone who says, 'You fool,' will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift." Obviously, we all know and acknowledge that murdering someone, taking someone's life, is wrong. And yet far too often, far fewer of us acknowledge the same about our anger and how damaging it can be. Everyday anger wrecks friendships, destroys marriages, greatly reduces our personal and corporate productivity, and ravages human emotions. When we fail to deal with our anger properly, it can be oftentimes a corrosive agent that eats a hole in our hearts and in our lives and in our relationships. And inevitably it spills over from us into others. And the end result is often ugly and painful. In fact, in the passage we just read in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus basically is telling us that murder and anger really aren't all that different, because in reality, murder stems from unresolved anger in our hearts. That's part of why God says this about anger in Psalm chapter 37, verse 8. He says, "Stop being angry. Turn from your rage. Don't lose your temper. It only leads to harm." God tells us to put a stop to our anger. It shouldn't be given any place in us or in our lives. And putting a stop to anger starts with knowing what causes it. Anger is a byproduct of certain ways of thinking, and oftentimes we get angry when one of the following things happen. Our expectations are unmet, our pride is offended, the pursuit of our goals is blocked or hindered, or our feelings are hurt. And when we get angry about these things, we typically respond in several ways. For instance, some people are brewers. And brewers, basically, they internalize their anger. They stuff their anger down deep inside, and over time, it's just this poison that seeps into their soul, shuts down their emotions, and often cripples their relationships. Usually, brewers aren't even aware of their anger or the impact it's having on them or the people around them. It's hidden in their hearts, unacknowledged and unaddressed. Then you have stewers. And stewards are a different breed. These folks are agitated and irritated and frustrated. Their anger isn't hidden. You can see it and sense it in them, like a pot sitting on the stove at like a high heat. There's just this intense and steamy presence about them. You never know if or when the explosion is coming. They rumble and grumble their way through life in this heated, threatening way. And then lastly, you kind of have spewers. Spewers kind of do what their name implies. Whatever is on the inside comes out, and whoever is nearby gets barraged by the blast. Spewers rant and rave like an emotional tornado. They detonate and then dissipate. and they leave lots of destruction in their wake. Brewing, stewing, spewing, those are all bad options when it comes to dealing with our anger. Each is the wrong way to handle it. And God says, stop it, right? Which is easier said than done. And so then the question becomes, how? Well, let me just give you a few steps maybe that you can think about and hopefully try and implement to hopefully diffuse and defeat the controlling power of anger. The first one is to recognize it. Learn to recognize anger in yourself. And when those emotions are bubbling up, all too often we're hijacked by anger without realizing what's happening to us. And so develop a sensitivity to the signs and the symptoms of the anger in your own heart and in your own soul. Don't let it sneak up on you, but be able to recognize it and deal with it. Secondly, reflect on it. To reflect is to think about something quietly and carefully. It is to contemplate. Now, I'm not saying that we should, again, stewing on our anger is bad, but thinking about what causes our anger and being able to sense and recognize and then think about and reflect on those things that make us angry or our emotions tied to our anger, that's a good thing. Anger, however, doesn't want reflection. It wants reaction. It screams at you to throw caution to the wind, to say what you want and do what you want and do what you feel and say what you feel. But God calls us not to let anger have its way. When you detect anger in yourself, just slow down and take a deep breath and step back and zip your lip. That's probably a really good step, just to not speak and not let that anger out. And take control of your mind and what's going on. Take some time to think about where your anger is coming from. What's causing that anger in you? What started it? What's making you vulnerable to it? And also reflect on the consequences of your anger. What damage will you do to yourself and others if you left your anger unchecked? And then third, release it. And again, I know that sounds easier said than done, but making a conscious decision that you are going to give up your anger is the best way to start to get rid of our anger. Turn your disappointments and your offenses and your frustrations and hurts over to God. Determine that you're going to do whatever it is necessary to make sure that anger doesn't invade you and poison you and pollute you. Forgive people. Accept disappointments and delays with patience instead of with anger and frustration. Trust God's plan and His timing. Don't stiffen yourself with pride, but humble yourself and begin to let it go. Nothing can rob joy and peace and destroy relationships more quickly than anger. So break its grip on your life. That's why the Apostle Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31, get rid of all bitterness and rage and anger and brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. God knows the damage that our anger can do. He doesn't want us to be angry, and so allow Him to get rid of your anger. After all, He made galaxies that we haven't even seen and discovered yet, and He dug canyons that we have yet to find. Don't you think He can heal your bitter heart? Maybe a better question is, do we want Him to? And that's not a trick question. He asked the same question that He asked the paralyzed man in John chapter 5. Do you want to be well? Do you want to get well? You see, not everybody does. Some of us are addicted to our anger. Some of us may be bitterness junkies. Our anger may be part of our identity, or so we think. But if you want Him to, He can change your identity. He wants to clean out your cellar and replace it with the fruits of His love. Do you want Him to do that? And then one final question, why don't you ask Him? So the next time those hurts surface in your memory and in your heart, recognize those emotions swelling up within you. Stop and reflect and go quickly into God's presence and release your anger to Him and allow Him to bring healing and peace to your heart. Hope you have a blessed day. God bless.